In August 2025, the U.S. Navy's Ford Carrier Strike Group was operating in the North Atlantic. This wasn't a special mission. It wasn't a secret. It was routine. The same kind of patrol American sailors have been doing for decades. Protect shipping lanes, train with allies, and remind everyone who controls the ocean. Everything was calm until it wasn't. During a routine patrol, sensors picked up something unusual beneath the water. Then another signal. Then another. Multiple submarines. They weren't passing through. They were moving toward the carrier group. That's when alarms quietly went off, not the loud kind, but the serious kind. The kind that tells officers this isn't an accident. What the U.S. Navy didn't know yet was that Russia's Northern Fleet had just issued new orders. Those submarines were told to move closer, stay hidden, and collect as much information as possible. Russia wasn't planning an attack. They were spying. Inside the USS Gerald R. Ford, officers in the combat center studied the data. Calm, focused, no panic. Because this carrier wasn't alone. 4 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers surrounded it. Each one was built to hunt submarines. Each one carried weapons designed for exactly this situation. Based on speed and distance, the Russian submarines would reach torpedo range in about 47 minutes. But here's the problem. The U.S. destroyers had anti-submarine weapons that could reach those submarines in under 90 seconds. So yes, Russia could fire torpedoes, but they would never survive long enough to enjoy it. At 3:03 p.m., the strike group commander asked a simple question. What's their intent? The answer was obvious. They were trying to listen, record, and learn. Instead of ordering an aggressive response, the admiral made a calm decision. "Let's watch them," he said. "Let's see how far they want to go." What the Russians didn't realize was that they had already been detected, and now NATO was waking up. Within seconds, the data was shared across NATO forces using Link 16, a system that connects ships, aircraft, and submarines in real time. The response was fast. A British warship training 50 miles away turned south at full speed. 8 P-8 Poseidon aircraft launched from air bases in Scotland, Norway, and Iceland. These planes aren't fighters, they're hunters. Each one costs over $100 million and is designed for one job: finding submarines and making their lives miserable. And deep underwater, a Virginia-class U.S. submarine had already been following the Russian subs since they left port days earlier. At 3:15 p.m., things got interesting. The Russians tried an old trick. One submarine moved higher and made noise on purpose, hoping to distract NATO. The other 2 went deeper, trying to slip past unnoticed. This tactic worked during World War II, but this was 2025. Modern NATO sensors instantly knew what was happening. They could tell which submarine was being loud on purpose and which ones were actually dangerous. Russia wasn't fooling anyone. Their real goal was intelligence. They wanted to record the carrier's sound profile, study escort formations, track radar signals, and monitor communications. All of this data helps plan future attacks. But NATO wasn't going to let that happen. By evening, the first P-8 Poseidon arrived over the area. The P-8 looks like a normal passenger plane, but inside it's packed with sonar gear, sensors, and tracking systems. The crew began dropping sonobuoys into the ocean. These are floating sonar microphones. They send sound waves into the water and listen for echoes. Inside a submarine, those pings are brutal. Every 30 seconds, ping. No silence, no relief, just noise. Imagine being trapped inside a metal tube while someone keeps hitting it from the outside. That's what the Russian crews experienced. While the Russian sailors were exhausted and stressed, NATO crews rotated in fresh teams, warm food, real beds, proper rest. Then the destroyers joined in. Their hull-mounted sonar systems activated, filling the ocean with sound powerful enough to stun fish. The sea itself became a weapon. Next came simulated attack runs. P-8 aircraft dove toward the ocean like they were about to drop weapons. Each time, Russian crews had to assume the attack was real. Emergency dives, sharp turns, ballast blown, over and over again. One submarine tried to escape by sprinting at full speed. That only made it louder. Instead of hiding, it announced its location to everyone nearby. So why didn't Russia just leave? Because the information they wanted was valuable. Every radar signal has a fingerprint. Every aircraft launch follows a pattern. Every communication reveals how a carrier group fights. If Russia could collect that data, they could build better weapons. But NATO wasn't finished. The submarines launched acoustic decoys, hoping to confuse tracking systems. NATO computers identified each decoy in less than a second and ignored them completely. By the next day, the hunt intensified. A British ship arrived with a massive towed sonar array stretching kilometers behind it. Helicopters hovered above the water, lowering dipping sonar straight down. The Russians tried hiding in underwater temperature layers. Didn't work. They tried hugging the sea floor. Still didn't work. They tried changing depth rapidly. Nothing worked. Above the water, NATO managed the airspace carefully. Aircraft flew at assigned heights. Helicopters stayed low. Every movement was controlled. In NATO command centers, data from ships, planes, and submarines merged into one live picture. Every Russian move was visible. Meanwhile, the U.S. Virginia-class submarine stayed silent the entire time. It followed perfectly, recording every sound and maneuver. At one point, it sent out a brief sonar pulse. Not enough to reveal its position, just enough to say, "We've been here the whole time." After nearly 48 hours of non-stop noise, stress, and zero sleep, the Russian crews were finished. They had tried everything: speed, silence, decoys, depth changes. Nothing worked. At that point, this was no longer a mission. It was survival. So the order came down quietly. Abort. Withdraw. Pretend it was planned all along. The submarines turned north and slipped away. Exhausted, exposed, and fully cataloged. But NATO didn't immediately let them go. The U.S. Virginia-class submarine stayed with them for miles, silent and invisible, recording every sound they made. Every pump, every propeller vibration, every mistake. At one point, it sent out a single, brief sonar pulse. Not enough to reveal its position, just enough to send a message. "We've been here the entire time." By the time the Russian submarines reached safer waters, it was already over. NATO now had acoustic fingerprints so detailed that these boats could be recognized anywhere in the ocean, instantly. Russian state media later called the operation a success. Sure, and the Titanic successfully tested iceberg detection, because the real lesson wasn't about submarines. It wasn't about technology. It wasn't even about Russia. It was about reality. The North Atlantic isn't contested waters. It's NATO's backyard. And once NATO knows you're there, you don't disappear. You're followed. You're mapped. You're remembered. For days. For years. For the rest of that submarine's life. Because in modern naval warfare, the moment you're detected, the hunt never really ends. Thanks for watching.